acknowledge the commissioners on Microsoft Teams. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the commission is meeting virtually. The meeting is being live streamed on the Port's YouTube channel. If you have a question or comment, please use the raise hand function to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. I'll work to call on people in order. At this time, I'll call for a motion and second to grant a leave of absence to Commissioner Simput, who is out of town.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Pam will lead us through the roll call vote, please.
Commissioners Alexander,
Present.
Cooper Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy, Commissioner Levy, McDonald, Nemi,
Present.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, ma'am. I'm here. I'll do
Oh. Very good. Thank you.
I'll now call for a motion and second for approval of the minutes of the regular commission meeting of August 11th, 2021.
So
Motion.
moved.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, Pam, would you lead us through the vote, please?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Cooper Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald, Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Curtis for the Executive Director's report and his remarks.
Terrific. Good morning, commissioners. Nice to see everyone remotely. Thanks for joining us again today. Let me start first by recognizing our safety champions for the last month. Again, a group of employees who across the organization have really gone above and beyond to help each other out, help our business partners out, identify threats where they exist to safety, and just want to call out Dana and Carrie and Jay here. Appreciate their effort and everything they and their colleagues are doing to focus on safety at the port, making sure people go home as good or better than they were when they showed up at work. So thanks to the three of them. Stan, are you ready for a safety message this morning?
Sure. Thanks, Curtis. My message today is that the Port of Portland is taking actions in observation of National Preparedness Month, and we invite all individuals and families to participate as well. Think about the disaster events reported in the news just this year. Extreme heat, flash floods, earthquakes, wildfires, hurricanes, to name but a few. National Preparedness Month, recognized each September, provides an opportunity to remind us that we all must prepare ourselves and our families now and throughout the year. This year, the theme is Prepare to Protect. Preparing for disasters is protecting everyone you love. Be informed. Know what disasters and hazards could affect your area, how to get emergency alerts, and where you would go if you and your family need to evacuate. Use the emphasis themes and resources at www.ready.gov to be prepared. To that end, the port community has been building resiliency into our infrastructure, operations, and disaster planning. To connect with our most valuable resources, our people, Emergency Management hosts a SharePoint page for employees full of emergency planning resources for employees and their families. In addition, PDX Lifesavers offers life-saving skills and training to all port and PDX community employees, first aid, CPR, AED, fire extinguisher education, among others. In closing, community leaders agree the formula for ensuring a safer homeland consists of trained volunteers and informed individuals taking action to increase the support of emergency response agencies during disasters. National Preparedness Month reminds all of us to prepare to protect by making a plan. That's my message, Curtis.
Terrific. Thanks, Stan. Really appreciate the focus on being prepared. So a bunch of good news today, which I know is unusual from me. Really first for our Marine team and shippers in the region, a story you all are very familiar with, but a year and a half after we started weekly container service again at Terminal 6, thanks to South Korea-based carrier SM Line, we have more container service coming to help address what are really becoming critical supply chain issues for local businesses, farmers and growers and consumers. The new business at T6 includes an expansion of the SM Line business that will add 2 additional vessels a month, an additional weekly container service operated by MSC, which is the second largest carrier in the world, and a new set of private charter vessels and domestic 53-foot container deliveries that are really expanding our bulk and break bulk business. I'm just really proud of all the work of our Marine team and our partners, including labor on the waterfront. We've really built a great partnership at T6, and I'm just honestly pleased as punch that it is going as well as it is, and people are working through all the issues that arise. It's really beginning to show. The charter vessels began arriving in August, and the MSC vessels will arrive here in the next couple weeks at T6. Another couple recognitions for the hard work of our teams away from the Marine front is announced earlier this morning. Travel and Leisure magazine recognized PDX once again as the best airport in America. 8th time we've won this award. Last year, you may recall, we came in 2nd, and we all said to ourselves, hey, you know, that's not so bad. We're under construction and we got a lot of disruption, and we're doing our best to help passengers through, but it's going to be okay, and we'll get this back after we're done with our construction. But honestly, through the hard work of our team on the ground, as well as all of our partners and employees on site at PDX, the dedication of those employees to helping passengers get through safely and effectively, we are just really proud of this award again. PDX employees just continue to show up every day with pride and focus on customer service, and I'm grateful to them all, not just port employees, but also all the employees on the ground who don't work directly for the port. Second big recognition, for the 3rd year in a row, we won Portland Business Journal's Oregon Healthiest Employer Award in the what's essentially a mid-size category, 500 to 1,500 employees. And in a year that has seen some extraordinary challenges to health and safety, the port's focus on wellness continued to grow, especially in the areas of mental health and emotional well-being. We launched a peer support employee resource group and welcomed guest speakers on the topic of mental health. And really through it all kept up our challenges in Sprout and our virtual fitness classes. It's just been a really great year. So thanks to the team really focused on keeping wellness front and center for the organization, and to all the port employees who are participating and being a part of this wellness and fitness really core value of the organization. I do want to note we're coming up on 9/11. We have a commemoration event this weekend. Port Police and Fire, TSA, CBP, Customs Border Protection, and the USO will join together for a brief event commemorating the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. I'm stunned that it's 20 years. I remember that day vividly, and I know many of you do. The event will take place immediately outside the USO this Saturday on September 11th. And in addition, paging and information staff will be facilitating a moment of silence terminal-wide that coincides with the timing of the attacks. And as I'm sure you all will remember, the attacks fundamentally changed the travel industry. Our marine business was affected, aviation business, and it was really the catalyst for formation of the Department of Homeland Security. In addition, loss of thousands of innocent lives. Finally, PDX Next has a lot going on. The construction in and around the terminal is active and continues apace. On September 14th, we'll have a new detour in place to the Concourse D gates to help everyone keep safe and avoid the construction of the westward expansion on site and what will eventually be the installation of the roof next year. So these things are happening, and we're going to continue to focus on making sure people get through safely and efficiently. We'll have new wayfinding and communications in place to support that move, but it really is the end of next week. And that, Madam President, are my comments for the day. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much, Curtis. I'll call for motion and second for approval of the Executive Director's report.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, Pam?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Wilcomis,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We didn't receive any public comments this month. I want to confirm that with you, Pam. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to our general discussion item, and I'll call on Bobby Stedman to introduce it.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning, Commissioners. We have been on this journey for 9 years now, and with your continual challenges and encouragement in our contracting processes and other areas of our business, we continue to learn, grow, and adapt. I'm going to ask them to move the slide forward to slide 2, which is our graphic slide, just as a quick refresher. The port began to lay its plans for our DEI work in 2013 and 15 by talking with the community and hiring some consultants to assess the port's HR systems and structures and community engagement. Then between years 16 and 19, we began to organize ourselves in a way that provided a programmatic approach to addressing systemic ways of working that were not mutually beneficial to the communities we serve. During that time, the Commission approved a social equity policy that leads with race. We consolidated our DEI and small business contracting into one division. We developed 18 departmental equity plans focused on increasing small business participation, creating a welcoming place to work, and equitable engagement. And then in 2020, we took a step back to reflect. Among a recession, a pandemic, Me Too, and racial justice movements, we concluded that now was the time to do more. We wanted to challenge ourselves to come out of this pandemic better than we entered it. And now is the time to recast and deepen our DEI work to truly operationalize the work through a shared prosperity lens. So in 2021, during the pandemic, we spent a lot of time working through what did shared prosperity mean to the port. And in the end, we identified 6 initial focus areas designed to demonstrate shared prosperity in action. And those 6 included building a trade and equitable development division, affectionately known as TED, focused on job creation and expanding trade opportunities to small businesses, accelerating the opportunities for small business to gain access to port professional services and construction contracting dollars, to redesigning the construction project delivery models so that small business have greater opportunity to participate in port work. We're increasing our resource capabilities in our DEI team, which has led to the formation of a shared prosperity office designed to integrate an equity lens into all business decision making. And partnering with trade unions to increase workforce diversity, really starting with our navigation division, which is one of the least diverse work groups, and then taking those learnings and leveraging them across other work groups. And then finally, really developing healthy and sustainable, mutually beneficial partnerships with the communities that we serve. Today, we're going to hear from several folks deeply engaged in this work. You'll be provided the annual metric reporting information, and you'll hear their narrative on progress made to date and where we're going. But before I hand it over to Dr. Nakana, I'd like to share a little bit more about our stories. So if you can advance the slide, please. In 2009, we began capturing the stories of port employees doing great work in the community. We share these stories on our intranet site so that all employees can see, feel, experience what we mean by equity, equitable partnerships, and community engagement. And just to highlight a few, because I know that slide can be difficult to read, Abby Carey, she works in the concessions team, and she worked on reducing the requirements in the RFP process that helped pull a larger, more diverse pool of candidates. And Lisa Fideli, who led a team of finance staff that looked for ways to increase the response participation from nationally recognized MBE and WBE and veteran-owned investment banks. And they now have a diversified pool of investment banks that they can work with. And then finally, I'd like to highlight Wendy Gibbon, who developed a PDX art program that creates innovative public spaces that accurately reflects and celebrates the diverse identities, histories, and communities that we serve. So some really, really great work here, and we'll continue to share these breakthrough stories as we build our progress towards the vision of shared prosperity. So that really concludes my introduction. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Nakana, who's going to lead the rest of today's presentation. Steve?
Thank you, Bobby. Steve Foster, may I please head to the next slide? Thank you, Steve. Good morning, commissioners. It's a pleasure to see your faces on screen again. I can't believe it's been a year, like a long, long minute, as we say in South Africa. Just to remind you, I think Bobby touched on these 3 goals. So my team, my colleagues and I are going to present to you really what we are doing on the ground. And just a quick, again, reminder, we have 3 goals that the port is working to achieve. And each goal has a metric that we track as a team internally across all the 18 equity shared prosperity plans that we have. And so I will be passing it on to Daphne Patrick, and Tamara and Cherie, and the 3 folks that I just called on will be talking to you about how the port is working to achieve what we set ourselves to achieve under goal 1. And then after that, they will pass it on to Joy Fowler, and Joy Fowler will talk about how we are meeting the metric under goal 2 and some of our internal employee programs. One of them you heard from Curtis around wellness and how we are doing over there. And then we'll pass it on to Elizabeth Kennedy Wong, who's going to talk to us about how the port is showing up in the community. And we have an amazing community partner, Chris Barber, who's going to speak to you about how that partnership is actually working to change lives with our work at at Hillsborough Airport together. Without further ado, Steve Foster, if you don't mind moving to the next slide. Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Daphne Patrick. Nice to meet you. I'm going to give you a snapshot of what the port has done this last fiscal year with small business participation. For this first graph, you will see the DBE and SBE award participation. It represents the blue are the new contracts for fiscal year 21, and the green would be the ongoing awards from previous years but still active. The DBE goal was 11.1% for FAA, and as you can see, we exceeded this goal, and it was due to a couple of projects that were contracted directly to DBE firms. This is largely due to extensive outreach and collaboration between the departments. The SBE goal is 20% for fiscal year 21. We were able to achieve 19%, which was slightly below our goal for the year, but if you look at the ongoing at 12%, It shows that our program over the last 5 years wasn't as aggressive as it is today. We plan for this to grow in our Shared Prosperity initiative. To recap, we have exceeded our overall goal with 25% combined DBE and SBE participation port-wide for fiscal year 21. This included $15 million that were awarded to SBE and DBE firms. This value also included $5.3 million awarded to Port Menor protege firms. Next slide, please. So the first steps in making progress toward our shared prosperity through contracting was broad stakeholder engagement. The port interviewed 11 community stakeholders who support small and diverse businesses. There was also a consultant that led the outreach to 50 small businesses who have held port contracts in the past 18 months, and various internal port stakeholders. While all these feedbacks from these groups were valuable to identify barriers and opportunities for doing business with the port, we primarily focused on themes received from the community and contractors. Those themes included the community engagement of reconfiguring solicitation packages, breaking up the mega projects into smaller work scopes to allow small business to better compete for this work, technical services training and support, the complex processes that exist when doing work on public contracts are often daunting to small businesses. In instances, technical training and support is needed to assist businesses and set the stage for successful completion of the work. Anti-harassment complaint process and education. Many firms owned by Black, Indigenous, people of color, and low-income workers or people with disabilities are often faced with harassment on projects. The port has contracted with Rise Up to establish an anti-harassment training program for all workers on our current T-Corps project, as well as working on establishing a complaint process for reporting any instances of harassment. Incentives, consequences for non-compliance. We can establish goals for small business and diverse workforce for port projects. However, we need a way to hold firms doing work on our projects accountable for meeting those goals. That being said, we're looking into possible incentives and/or consequences for non-compliance. In response to the feedback we received, we developed 6 strategies that will focus on addressing the shortcomings identified in our processes and how to improve those processes used to contract for our work. These strategies are: examine current contracting methods and remove barriers. Basically, simplify our processes and requirements. Establish a target market program. Identify the areas of opportunity for small businesses and focus on outreach for those projects to small businesses. Provide outreach and technical service support to assist businesses in competing for port contracts, but also to successfully complete the work when it's awarded. Develop an internal communication and training program. Developing tools and education for port staff to better enable them to identify opportunities for small businesses. Increase contract compliance requirements and accountability, making goals a requirement of the contract, more robust compliance reporting, and consequences for non-compliance. Lastly, real-time access to reporting data, internal and external transparency to data on how we are tracking with our goals on small businesses spend and workforce utilization. By looking at these strategies, we are very excited to increase our partnerships with our community partners as we continue our focus on this work. Thank you very much. Next slide.
Thank you, Daphne. If there are no questions for Daphne right this moment, we are going to pass to Shri and Tamara Kennedy to walk us through their slides. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. So the Business Development and Properties team a few years back integrated an equity lens into all of their opportunity review processes for development, internal development, purchase and sale agreements, master development agreements. And in order to boost shared prosperity through our real estate transactions, we started requiring small business utilization on every project, not just the ones the port pays for, but the ones that come in through our purchase and sale agreements and master development agreements. Quality job creation of permanent quality jobs, not just the jobs created by the actual construction, and community engagement to figure out what else the surrounding communities on these projects really need and want. And we've got a few amazing things in the pipeline. All of these are in various stages of negotiation, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the actual transactions. They're all going to come to you through commission, and you'll get to hear the nitty-gritty. But so far, we have 3 different transactions in the pipeline that hit all of these criteria on Gresham Vista Lot 10, Gresham Vista Lot 5, and Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park. And they will bring millions of dollars in contracts to small business enterprises and minority and women-owned small businesses during the development and construction, and then up to hundreds of quality jobs, permanent quality jobs for the regions. Other community impacts are still in development while these deals are being negotiated in coordination with the local governments, with local organizations that can speak for the community and, community stakeholders, so we can really boost the port's shared prosperity and the support of BIPOC communities in the region. A great example of that is the transaction going on in Gresham Vista Lot 10. We've worked with the company developing that lot, and the port worked with Mount Hood Community College to create a vocational and apprenticeship program that will create the pipeline of workers for this new plant and create quality jobs. Also, in the works is possible support for BIPOC farmers of the community, sponsorships of area events, and sponsorship of the downtown Rockwood mixed use development. So we have a lot of great things in the pipeline, and this is just the beginning, because now that the commercial department's turned into the Trade and Equitable Development Division, they're taking programs to a whole other level and creating programs, internal programs, and partnering with external organizations to create, just to boost so much equity with the port's resources, with the port's properties. So here to tell you about the programs is Tamara, who oversees trade and strategic partnerships for the TED team.
Thank you, Cherie. So I'm going to just touch base on some of the work that the TED team, Trade and Equitable Development Division, which is the new pivot from the commercial division, as Cherie mentioned. So as you saw, that we've been applying an equity lens in our real estate transactions for a number of time, and the port's focus on shared prosperity has allowed us to be intentional and strategic with our regional partners to be able to align what we're hoping to achieve, which is we have our North Star here. We seek to create equitable outcomes for the region through our leadership, resources, and community partners. It's really allowing us to take a portfolio approach to how we look at our assets, as well as our expertise and influence, to align with programs like the Greater Portland Inc.'s Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, as well as the statewide strategy, which is focused on centering intergenerational wealth opportunities for historically marginalized communities, in particular BIPOC, low-income communities, and people with disabilities. So some of the key focus areas and areas that we're really excited as we are kind of advancing in these transformational opportunities, and if I could channel Commissioner Alexander for a moment to say that we've embraced that this is a movement and not a moment. And so we're focusing on, again, looking at innovative real estate opportunities for community development, looking at new industry market opportunities such as statewide focus and interest around cross-laminated timber, how that might be a new sustainable market that could provide new workforce training opportunities, as well as connecting the urban rural opportunities around quality job creation. We are really excited to be able to work intentionally and directly with community partners around opportunities to help address disparities and gaps, particularly with BIPOC leaders, as well as business entrepreneurship and owners in climate tech. And we'll be sharing more about these opportunities because I'm learning a lot about the difference between climate tech and clean tech and accelerators and incubators. But all that means is pathways and opportunities to really change the trajectory of who can benefit from high growth industry clusters in this region. And we're really excited to share more about those programs in the near future. And again, as I said, we're centering this work in partnership with our community stakeholders and regional partners in economic development so that we can achieve economic mobility, support a competitive economy in this region, and ensure regional resiliency. Thank you very much, and I'll go ahead and pass on to my colleagues for the next slides.
Thank you. And the next slide will be given to Joy Fowler, who will talk to us about our internal work at the port. Joy, take it away.
Alrighty, thank you. Well, good morning, commissioners. Very happy to be here this morning and see you all virtually. What you see in front of you is just an overview of Welcoming Place to Work. Just to back up for 1 second and let you know our strategies. They're evaluating and eliminating recruitment barriers, which does involve retention, building cultural competency, and employee-centered programs. So as we look at this slide, one of our objectives is that we meet or exceed market availability for both women and Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And for this past year, we actually exceeded in both with market availability. So when we look at women, it is 0.67% above market. And for people of color or Black, Indigenous, and people of color, it is at 0.25% above market availability. So while we don't know what will come in reference to the new census data that has come out, it was really nice to see that we were exceeding that within the port. And then we also managed to take a look at promotions because that is also critically important at the port. And we always set the target based on the percentage of our workforce that is in the port. So for women, the workforce is at 33%. And for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, it is at 17%. So that is what our target is. And for women, we exceeded we didn't exceed. We were at 32% for this fiscal year and 13% for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And we attribute that just to the nature of the pandemic and the situation that we were in, working remote and all of that. So that is what we would like to share in reference to that component. Next slide, please. You heard me talk about retention also being a factor. So here you can see we did have from last fiscal year to this current fiscal year, we did see a drop of 5% in our retention. And we do attribute that to just being in this unprecedented time in reference to the pandemic and all of the things associated with that. You also saw the port did work to get smaller. We had retirements, voluntary layoffs, and attrition. And so all of that contributes to the factors of why our retention rate did decrease. We do actively look at areas of opportunity of the varying demographics to really take time to recognize where we need to focus our attention. And so we saw some real opportunities in doing that. The first thing we did was we hired a third-party consultant to examine our recruitment process. That consultant spoke to executive leadership, human resources, hiring managers, as well as incorporating discussions with our employee and business resource group leaders. And the report will help to really guide us in how we move forward. And in that moving forward, we will also have a focus on retention. In doing so, we also look to leverage all of our current resources that we have. So this was really an exciting opportunity for us this past year in that we hosted what we like to call conscious conversations. We hosted over 45 conversations over the last fiscal year. And we touched on every component from the things that were going on within our community to race, bias, privilege, all of those things, and really gave employees an opportunity to have deep conversation, all which we think leverages how we want to look and focus on our retention. In addition, we also looked at our engagement survey results because, as we know, engagement survey results also help kind of guide where we're at and how we're doing. And we are piloting with a few managers to really kickstart how we understand improving not only the employee experience, but also inclusion and belonging within the port. When thinking about leveraging our resources, this also includes our employee-centered programs. So if I can have you go to the next slide. And during the pandemic, I am so thrilled to share that our programs continued virtually in a very positive and effective manner. On the right side, you will see that we added an employee resource group, that we really look to still continue to hold our virtual celebratory and Heritage Month activities. And then our resource groups really served in an advisory capacity in multiple ways. Our business resource group, we have one right now, it's called Leaders Next, and they focused on leadership and management. They held a variety of workshops and really had several guest speakers to help develop their leadership skills. Our pop culture team was truly engaged in this past year. We held a very, very successful diversity summit and a culture week where we had great participation. They consistently share communications as to what they're doing and updates. And then they also participated, you heard me talk about the engagement survey that we're working on. They actually took time to analyze past engagement surveys to identify themes and how we should move forward. And then they proudly worked on DEI annual training that actually starts this month. We are launching our first training, and we held a White Men in Diversity series that is continuing to share in its third series coming up in the month of October. And then you heard Bobby and Curtis both talk about the wellness program, and there were all of the things that we did and in terms of wellness, because we do recognize and continue to recognize that our wellness is critical during not only regular time, but also during this time of the pandemic. As we focus on that, we also look at our inclusion metrics. And so on the left, you will see that our metrics maintained themselves in terms of our DEI understanding. And then in reference to how people or employees within the organization see in a sense of inclusion, you did see a slight drop. And we do attribute that to just working remote and being in all of the things that we're experiencing, being in this environment, whether it be virtual or being someone that continues to go in to help the port continue to run. And so one of the highlights I would like to also share is that our training and education really did jump. It went from 23% for the 2019-20 fiscal year, and we are currently at 53.5% this fiscal year. And so it is really nice to see that the port is actively engaged in really demonstrating progress in reference to DEI. And our hope is that during this fiscal year, we can actually increase our training and education to 100% and really delivering in that area. Thank you all so much for letting me share all of that data very quickly. And I will pass it back to Stephen.
Thank you, Joy. We can move to the next slide, Steve. Thank you. And the next slide, Elizabeth Kennedy Wong will walk us through how the port is showing up on with our engagement in the community. Elizabeth, please take it away.
Thanks, Steve. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for your time. I'm really happy to be here to share with you kind of the progress of developing what isn't necessarily a new program around community engagement for the port, but it's a really new approach and a shift in the way that we're thinking about how we engage community, and how we incorporate their perspectives and insights into our work. The information that we've gathered over the past year, internally and externally, the kind of profound social, environmental, and economic circumstances that we find ourselves in, and the changes to the organization itself have really required us to alter how we work with the community. So one thing I think that we have been learning over the past year is that community engagement itself is not the outcome. The community engagement informs how we do our work. And I think that in both Goal 1 and 2 presentations, one of the things that you would hear as a theme throughout that is that a lot of the effectiveness of the changes that we're making are resulting from their ability to have conversations with and engage external community partners that really inform how we do our work. And that's really what we're looking at with Goal 3 is how do we use external information to inform the outcomes that we are working toward. So we have more information about how our work fits with community priorities and goals based on a lot of surveys and conversations that we've had with the public. And so the work that we're doing to create the program is broken down into 3 phases. Research and evaluation, that's the work that we've done from July to January. We've had more than 30 different interviews. We've interviewed staff, and we've reviewed the past equity work plans and the outcomes that we're getting from them. The second phase is the implementation. What are we doing to actually create and implement a consistent and robust community engagement program in the port? And then the third phase that we're working toward that we should be starting in January is really how do we review and evaluate our effectiveness with working with the community? So as I said, in phase 1, what we did is we reached out to and learned from the community what their perspective was and what their experience was working with the port. What did it feel like to work with us? One of the things that we learned from them that was they didn't feel like we knew each other very well. They wanted more authentic interactions. They honestly felt like some of the interactions were very superficial, and they wanted to see more in the way of equity in the work that we do. The other piece of work that we did was reviewing the equity work plans. And one of the things we saw showed us that we had a lot of work to do to make sure that there was a consistent understanding of what community engagement was and how we approach it in our work and use that community gathered feedback to inform what our outcomes are. So that set the stage for phase 2. In February, we convened a meeting of all the equity team leads in the organization and shared with them kind of the update to what Goal 3 equitable engagement is. We created a program and shared outcomes that were designed to move the teams from what was historically a traditional public involvement model to something that is community engagement. It reflects current best practices, and it really was centered in bringing the voices of the BIPOC community to the table. One of the things we did is we created an organization-wide definition of engagement, which is it's a mechanism by which external information is obtained and used to inform our work. And the focus of that engagement is really prioritizing bringing the voices of Black, Indigenous, and people of color to the table so that the outcomes that we're delivering to the community are consistent with what they're saying is the best outcome for them. So the second thing we did is we created shared goals for all of the teams to help them really focus, be strategic, and create measurable outcomes around engagement. The goals included enhancing community capacity, really working to make sure that the community had the ability to engage with us effectively. The second is inviting diverse perspectives, creating those opportunities for external stakeholders to give us information and advice on policy and programs. And the third was engaging thought leaders, which is really developing deep partnerships with community-based organizations that result in different outcomes for the port. Since introducing those trainings, we've had introducing those concepts, those shared definitions, and those shared goals, we've conducted more than 20 trainings with individual departments on what that means and how does that show up in their work. We've worked with them one-on-one to do coaching sessions to say, okay, let's talk about how we invite community perspectives into your work. And we've really worked to make sure that the work plans are consistent and shared and understandable. So the standard of equitable engagement that we're trying to create is to make sure that we have plans that are strategic, focused, and measurable. And as I said, it's a shift in the way that we're thinking. It's taking time, and you can see that it's a culture shift that people are working for. They're struggling with it, and they're really showing up in the work and trying to do it. So currently we have about, of the 17 divisions, 5 of them have completed updated work plans that really reflect bright line ways to work with the community and bring community perspectives into and change how they do their work. And over the next 4 months, I'm going to be working one-on-one again with the 12 other divisions to really talk and say, what is the work that you're trying to accomplish? Where is it that we can gather information that can help change the outcomes for the work that you're doing? And then in December, the goal is to have 17 work plans that really reflect what equitable engagement is, what the shared outcomes are, and the goals of being strategic, measurable, and focused in our work. So next slide. Here's what we're looking to create. And I think this is always the really important bit. We want to create an organization that's really prioritizing centering the voices of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our engagement activities so that at the end of the day, we know what the outcomes are that the port can deliver that really benefit those communities. We want to be able to apply that information and understanding to the policies and work of the port and its projects. And ultimately, as we've articulated through the Shared Prosperity Initiative and Goals 1 and 2, we really want to make sure that the benefits of the port and our activities accrue to the communities who have historically borne the burden of our work and not been benefiting from the work of our port. So I'm excited by the progress that we're making. I'm excited by the commitment that staff has shown in showing up and trying to really work through what does this look like in my work. And we have a bit of work left to do. So I'm happy to answer any questions, talk more about this. Thank you.
Okay. Then, Steve, if you don't mind moving us to the next slide. Okay, we're going to invite now our partner in the community, Chris Barber, who will walk us through some slides about how the port and Chris and his colleagues have partners to launch a program. I'll just give a quick bio. Chris Barber graduated from Oregon State with a BS in graphic design, and he flew for the Navy and Air Force for 20 years. Currently, he's the captain at Southwest Airlines, and from 2016 to 2018, he was the chairman of the board of the Oregon International Airshow and a board member of the Oregon Airshow Charitable Foundation. We asked Chris to join us here so that Chris can indicate to you, or rather walk us through how equitable engagement look like in practice so that it meets the outcomes or the goals that Elizabeth was talking about in her presentation. Without further ado, please, Chris, take it away.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. We go to the next slide, and I do want to thank all of you for your time. Commissioners, thanks for your time. And before we start, I want to congratulate you on Travel and Leisure's #1 airport in the country. As someone that goes through a lot as an airline captain, that means a lot, and I truly stand by those. Today, I have the opportunity to talk to you about the Oregon Aerospace Career for Everyone. That's a program of the Oregon Airshow Charitable Foundation. Next slide. As Steve already mentioned to you, my name is Chris Barber. I'm currently a captain for Southwest Airlines, and I had the privilege to fly in the Navy for F-18s in the Navy for 12 years. And then I was also able to fly those loud noise generating aircraft across your runway for the Oregon Air National Guard. So I flew F-15s and retired from there about 3 to 4 years ago. Next slide, please. Well, the Oregon Airshow Charitable Foundation is a foundation that was spun off of the Oregon International Air Show. And it's personal to me because as a board member of the Oregon International Air Show, while we were there, we had a 30-plus year career, and we've been able to give away over $3.4 million to local charitable community organizations. While that's exciting and happy for us, we started to ask the question, is there a way that we could potentially make a longer, sustainable giving to our community? And in that process, we ultimately came up with the fact that maybe we could create our own separate 501c3. So we did that in 2017, and we initiated and launched through seed money from the Oregon International Air Show, the Oregon Airshow Charitable Foundation. And our mission is to support and inspire those with a passion of flight and a desire to learn. And our vision is to promote and fund aviation careers, education through support and scholarship. About the same time, you may recall, Boeing came out with a study that basically said in the next 15 to 20 years, they were showing a 240,000 pilot shortage as well as a 240,000 mechanic shortage. Well, as an airline captain, when I look around the cockpit, the demographics looks very similar to me, a bunch of old white guys sitting in there. And we recognized as a board, the only way to meet that was to start looking at attracting women and people of color. Next slide. So we went to our school district as well as Portland Community College, and we talked to them and asked, is there a way that we could help support an aviation career pathway in the public school system so that we could try to reach these initially untouched areas and attract more women and people of color into this industry? Well, my background in the military, oftentimes when you'd come up with a good idea, you were told to shut up a color and get rid of that. Well, I was extremely excited and surprised when I came up with this idea and presented there as a board. They both were totally bought onto this, and they began working diligently with us to see if we could develop that career path. Well, through the introductions of Steve Nagy and Donna Prigmore, next slide, I was able to actually connect with the Port of Portland, and we were able to pitch with you this fledgling idea, this blueprint that we had. At the time when we first talked with you, we didn't even have a name. That name you can see at the top, we'll talk about in a second here, but we didn't have a name. We just had an idea and a vision of where we're going. But we were looking for a place to house this vision, where we could eventually end up having kids meet in this career pathway. Well, through your support and your partnership, you provided a space for us at the Hillsborough Airport, the old radio station there. And you also provided us with the opportunity to truly, next slide, bring community together, to bring our community together. We've had over 20 partners, and you can see just a few of them that are actually on this slide. But this was the part that really, truly touches my heart the most. You gave us a space, and with about 2,000 hours of volunteer time, as well as money and people doing designs, people volunteering equipment, people volunteering actually supplies for that space. We have brought that community together and have already started to create a space for these kids to actually attend school at. Next slide. So if you hear nothing else, I want you to hear this. Your commitment and partnership already has changed lives. We are starting the second year, the Hillsborough School District is starting the second year of this OACE program. And as I mentioned there at the top of the last slide there, our OACE program means the Oregon Aerospace Careers for Everyone. You can see it underlined here. You can see it bold in print as well as capitals. And everyone is extremely important to us because we want to ensure that it is equitable, obtainable for everyone, as well as it came together, we brought that community together. So as we start that second year this year, we are excited because kids will actually be in person. This last year was a COVID year that was online. We had initially 50 kids. We ended the year because of COVID and a bunch of different people moving with 42 students. We only can have 50 students a year going through this classroom. We had 80 applicants this year, so they've had to pare it down. And our demographics from last year was 21% female and 51% non-white. So we're super excited about that. The top left corner shows Sherry Fisher. She is our teacher. I wish she could be here today, but she's preparing for her classes that'll be coming in. When we brought this idea originally to Portland Community College, as well as Hillsborough School District, the biggest fear I had was finding the right person to be the teacher. Sherry is a person that's a phenomenal person. She has my utmost trust. Is a pilot, and she is actually working our CFI right now. She is a phenomenal champion for this OACE program and truly someone that inspires children to learn and is truly changing that next generation. Yvette she's going into her sophomore year. She was part of this initial beta test class last year. She's an amazing young woman. And she, because of the tutelage of Sherry right now, is planning on becoming a pilot. And she's going to be one of the first generation that's be going to college is her plan. You can see in that middle slide at the bottom there, that is going to be Sherry as well as Larry. Larry is the aviation science major for Portland Community College. And you have Yvette there who's doing a tour of the facilities. And on the right side, I do want to thank you. This is a picture of that space that you've given us at the Hillsborough Airport that we've been allowed to remodel and change out. This classroom is inspiring to me specifically because I've asked many first officers that are next to me in this when I'm flying, what would it be like if you had an aviation career path in a high school system where you could look outside and see that runway? And to a person, they said it would change their vision, their focus, and their energy. And I think that's truly important. Next slide. Well, we know with this Oregon Aerospace Career for Everyone, we wanted to stay focused, and we have three main goals. Our first goal is to create an aviation-based educational experience that will produce confident, adventurous leaders for any field. We want to inspire the youth to choose aviation career paths to provide the aviation workforce for the future, and provide a pathway for all members of our diverse community towards careers through career technical education. I know for a fact for myself, as well as what I've seen for others, and even these students already, that the very first point is one of the most important to me. Aviation excites people. Probably all of you are on this board, as well as in something with the Port of Portland, because of aviation, one way or another. It's captured or excited you for one thing. I see aviation as ways to challenge kids, and when we take young adults and then treat them as adults, basically make that standard that if they're going to be involved in this program, they have to reach this standard. We actually create confident leaders. And it doesn't matter to me if they do stay in that aviation field. Obviously, that's what we're creating a pathway for. We do need to meet these objectives. And it connects kids with high wage, high demand jobs. But I know for a fact, if they never take down that aviation path, we are creating the next leaders for the future and the next generation. Next slide. Well, it's extremely important for us as a foundation to also express to you that this is a phased approach. We're just a flash in the pan, but it is very important for us as a board of the Oregon Airshow Charitable Foundation to ensure that we have tangible, marketable success. And we already have that right now with our first phase here of launching that OACE program. We have the initial program that went through last year. They're starting it again this week, and we have more applicants than we have space for. And that, as we see, is a success. We're hoping to continue that. Next slide. Now, this program actually draws specifically in the Hillsborough School District, and it draws from their 4 high schools. So kids from each one of those high schools can apply into this OACE program. But as I mentioned, we only have 50 kids. I've already been contacted after last year from about 30 parents or kids to say, how do I get my child into this program? How do we connect to this thing? We have a supply and demand issue where we have much more need than we have ability to go through this one program. So the way that we've connected with this is we're going to create this year an aerospace exploratory club. It'll be an after-school club. We already have a partner out in Lakeland, Florida that is already doing a model like this. So we're leveraging a lot of the tools that they've already worked through in order to apply it to what we have right now. But the simple concept essentially is that at the host school of those 4 campuses, you would have this aerospace exploratory club. And that club would then meet maybe once or twice a month at Hillsborough Airport, where they would all bring all together, depending on COVID, how it plays out. But long and short is we've connected with Portland Community College students there and pitched this idea. Now you'll be excited to hear that those kids want to reach back into the high school. They want to act as mentors for these high school kids to allow these kids to stay focused. And they understand, because they're so close to age, the challenges that are involved in this. And they want to continue to take this along, both an aviation and mechanic path, as we start to explore this together. So that's where we're going to go with our phase 2. Next slide. Phase 3 takes us into a STEM Workforce Development Expo. Now, what I want you to envision, and I'll say this as a thing, we want tangible success and small process. So I want you to envision about year 10, maybe 12 down the road, a student-led, student-run workforce development here, or expo at the Hillsborough Airport. I would love it if that we have kids all throughout the state that are actually going to be coming into a week-long event that will be at Hillsborough. Don't think of this as a traditional air show. Think of this as a STEM workforce development, where a kid that is interested in marketing, they're going to be the ones down in Coos Bay that are marketing to their local area. Maybe if they're in Klamath Falls, they're going to be the ones and they're interested in business management development. They would be the ones going into Joe Wynn to actually say, here's our budget. Here's why I need you to support us in this engagement. Or if you're interested in art, you'll be the one that actually designs the posters. These kids can use this at that senior capstone, bring that in there, and on the Thursday, Friday of that week, they're the ones that are actually developing a challenge on the STEM Expo. We'll work with the Oregon Department of Education so that all throughout the state, our science, our math, our education, as well as art would focus in on this, where we can have an expo potentially during that week event. Locally, we can work with the education of both the elementary and the middle school. So maybe on the Monday, the Tuesdays, and the Wednesdays, we can bus kids in from our Portland metro area so they can actually have tangible learning. And we can try to develop that shared equity model so that people all have access in our local area here. And then that Thursday through Saturday, that's where we start to have those competitions. We start to have that Sim Expo. And as we go into the weekend, we do have something similar to the tangible learning with potentially some flying event in here to make it exciting for all. But also that's where we really connect with our community here and try to show that workforce development, where those kids that are in high school can see it, but even adults in our local community recognize that, hey, this might be a career change opportunity for me. We truly believe that this might spawn more actual industry coming to our area specifically for this. So that's an idea that we have to go into phase 3. Phase 4, if you can go to the next slide, please. So I've already mentioned that we have kind of a throughput issue. I see this expanding. And again, if you envision out to maybe that 10, 12, 15-year point, could be sooner where it's at right now. But I would love to have the idea here of a Aerospace Community Education Center of Excellence, a center of excellence here at the Hillsborough Airport. I did look at the port's master plan, and you do have an education center that you're even envisioning out there at Hillsborough as well. The way that we would kind of see this is potentially during that school day, that everyone in that Hillsborough County, where it's Forest Grove, where it's out there in Beaverton, we're looking at North Plains, Hillsborough, they could come in and do that traditional, what I've alluded to, the Oregon Aerospace Career for Everyone education career pathway. We could also have the Portland metro area come in for field trips and STEM education in that area. After school, we could make more of a robust aviation club for all of the area here, as well as a STEM challenge center or STEAM challenge center. And the evenings, work with PCC to be able to make that workforce development and job placement classes out there. On the weekends, kind of maybe once or twice a month, depending on volunteers, we can make an OMSI type of event where it's experiential learning. So we have the community, the kids that are coming in, so they actually get hands-on experience with what we know about the fun of aviation here. And potentially during the summer, we create those STEAM camps for all of the states, so kids can come in there and continue to grow and find the wonders of aviation here, as well as creating some type of workforce development and job fairs during those summertime frames. Next slide. Well, that's a very quick overview of our 4 years of engagement that we've come from here. But as we go into the questions, I want you to think about what excites you about our future vision, and then what part of the port's involvement that you were most excited or proud about from what the port's done. Before we go into that, I do want to say thank you very much for your time. And I want you to know that your commitment already has begun to generationally change those lives. I know that we're creating shared prosperity for our community. We're hoping to take this larger throughout the state, but it's important for us to have those small, tangible success as we go forward. So again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chris, for amazing presentation. I'm always moved when I reach it. And it's funny, I see Rotary involved there. Rotary has changed my life. And there's another story to tell over there. And we can go to the next slide. Thank you. Not sure if there's questions for Steve. We're going to be closing up our presentation right now, and I'm just going to walk you through what we have. So just off the press, we finished our annual report. So everything that we described today will be given to you in the annual report that we had promised you that we'll be writing every year. So that the team and I just finished it last night. So hopefully it will be ready with all your materials today. And then we are going to continue with Equity Shared Prosperity Plan refresh, as Elizabeth indicated in her presentation. And we are going to be addressing some contracting issues that Daphne and her team are experiencing. And then 3, we're going to continue with our internal programming, especially around capacity building. As Joy indicated, we have some innovative and interesting ideas that are coming in. And as Elizabeth indicated as well, we are continuing to embed Goal 3. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done around Goal 3 so that we can also increase the capacity on what we mean by equitable community engagement. How does it look like? How do you see it? And then how do you measure and track? And we'll be doing a lot of that. And as Bobby indicated in the first presentation during the introduction, we are building out the Shared Prosperity Office. We are in the process of that already. And with that, commissioners, I wrap up our presentation for you today about our progress that we have managed to achieve implementing our Equity Shared Prosperity Plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. I would say, and maybe this is in response to one of the questions that was posed to the commission, what's most exciting about the program, and I'll say this broadly, not just about the Hillsborough Aviation Program, but about all of the work that's been done, which is that there appears to have been a deep questioning of structures that are in place that have gotten us to the status quo, and then a questioning of how do we interrupt that? How do we disrupt it? How do we open opportunities to more people who may never have seen themselves in the work of the port? And so I appreciate that all of the way across through the number of programs that were described today and the initiatives. I know it was a lot of work from people across the port, and so I thank you for that. I want to give folks time to reflect or ask any questions of the rest of the commissioners.
Madam President, I'll go first. First of all, thank everyone. This was just rich, comprehensive, broad. I think it speaks to the focus and the intentionality of the work at the port over the last several years. Excited about a lot of what I heard, and pleased to be in a space with a number of individuals who in years past I've had the opportunity to work with outside of the port, with Elizabeth and Tamara and Joy, and to know that those folks are all a part of this effort is tremendous. And Dr. Nakana, obviously you have fingerprints on this work. I do think that there will continue to be opportunities to grow. I was very encouraged to see an intentionality and a centering of the needs of communities who are impacted by disabilities within the scope of the work. I think the overlay of race on top of that becomes increasingly important, because even within that designated groups, the impacts of race and culture are just as traumatic. And if we're not focusing on BIPOC-led organizations, then that disparity can become lost in the good intention of identifying a larger subset. So I do think it, and I am very encouraged, Chris, by the work, and I know that a lot of this is sort of Washington County focused, but I'm looking towards the opportunity to extend the concentric circles into Portland. I know there have been some efforts made there at Hillsborough with a number of smaller community groups that are Portland-based that are trying to sort of raise the visibility and the attraction of these career pathways with young BIPOC communities. So being able to establish that foundation and then look to see who fellow travelers might be, I think is going to be another growth opportunity. So thank you all. I mean, this is, it's broad, it's comprehensive, it's deep, and in a very positive way. It's disruptive, and that's important.
Thank you. Commissioner McDonald.
Thank you. I wanted to thank all of you, Bobby and your whole team. It's just an amazing breakthrough end-to-end solution that you've shown us, and I think you should all feel so proud of the work that you've done over the last 9 years, and just the exciting path forward that you're showing us. I truly believe you're creating really a virtuous cycle of shared prosperity. And I know my words sound verbose at this moment, but I just really want to compliment you. And I know this is really tough and challenging work, and you have persevered. And I think, the sky is really the limit for this Port of Portland team. Thank you.
Commissioner Nimi.
Me else or somebody else?
I think Commissioner Nimi was next. I'm not sure if she's on.
It's okay. I got it. I thank you. It took a second always. I also agree. I appreciate really the work here and the focus. I think in particular, you can really see the impact on the operations of the 700 or so people that work directly for the Port of Portland. And I appreciate that there's a call out about the contracted work of the port, because I think that's where our economic footprint is really the largest. And so
as we take this work into the future, I really believe that we have to look at the subcontracted out work of the airlines as the place that I think we can really make the biggest impact by setting some concrete standards, because we know that there are a lot of Black, Indigenous, Brown, immigrant women working for those employers and in those jobs. And I think then how is it that there is an economic benefit and a quality of life benefit for that group? And I wrote a comment here to ensure that I think it's the assets of the port accrue to the communities historically who have borne the burden. So I look forward to that work.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Levy.
Is that me, Alex?
It is. Yes, sir.
Sorry. Well, for one who's been here, I think since 2013 or maybe slightly before, it's really great that I can now see how the work, how when we originally started talking about some of this, how it actually got onto paper, and actually we can see the metrics and actually see the progress and how this program will go forward. I think originally it was a little difficult, but boy, the port staff has done a great job, and I echo what the other commissioners said, but it's certainly an example for other organizations and institutions, and so it'll be interesting to see how this takes effect in the years to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions with respect to this issue? I know it's work that will continue and continue to grow and change, and we would encourage Curtis and the team to bring it forward on a regular basis to let us know where you are, what challenges you're seeing, and how we as the Commission can help.
This is Commissioner Lamb. I just want to echo what other commissioners are saying about the team effort and leadership at the port in supporting this important work moving forward for our community. And I just want to say I'm very proud of the team, and I'm so grateful to see this work is in discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lamb. Any other comments before we move to our next item?
Just thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Halloran. Thank you for the team and for the time for the presentation. We really appreciate it, and I know I dug into the materials as I was reading through them, so appreciate the work. We're going to move on to our consent item, and I want to ask if any commissioner wants a presentation on the item, the title of which is Approval of Expenditure Under Intergovernmental Agreement, TriMet Signal Communication Room Relocation, PDX. So not seeing anyone ask for a presentation, I'll call for a motion and second for approval of the consent item.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Pam, would you lead us through the roll call vote, please?
Commissioners Alexander.
I'm sorry, Pam, just a moment. Commissioner Nemi, did you have a comment or question?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I just would like to make a note here that I think that in our relationship with TriMet, it's so important that we continue to advocate for hours of service, which have been curtailed even further due to COVID-19 and really impact the folks that are trying to commute to the airport. So I understand this is a separate item, but I hope we'll use this item to further those discussions as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other discussion on this item? Okay, go ahead, Pam.
Commissioners Alexander.
Aye.
Cooper Comas.
Aye.
Lamb.
Aye.
Levy.
Yes.
McDonald.
Aye.
Nemi.
Aye.
O'Halloran.
Aye.
And Strader.
Aye.
Thank you. Our next item will be introduced by Antoinette Chandler.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning, Commissioners. Today, we're before you requesting your approval of our fiscal year 22 risk management plan. I'll just reference that the Commission Policy 6.1.1 outlines the Executive Director may contract for insurance when consistent with a Commission approved risk management plan for the Port. And given that our Port's risk management plan was last presented in 2015, and I think coupled with that, the recent organizational leadership change of the CFO and the risk management director over the past year, we felt it would be prudent and timely to provide you with a risk management update, highlight some of our preliminary identification of the Port's risk landscape, and to seek your approval of our fiscal year 22 risk management plan initiatives and programs. And I think also I just want to lastly mention that as we continue, to continue to refine our strategic framework for the Port's risk management plan, our plan, we'd like to come back to the Commission this time next year to present you with a variance analysis against our fiscal year 22 results, and also to present you with a rolling 3-year forecast of our risk management plan as we look to fiscal years 2023 through 2026. So with that, I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to introduce our risk director, Dylan Lauzon, who will walk you through this morning's presentation. So I'll turn it over to you, Dylan.
Thank you, Antoinette, and good morning, Commission. Again, my name is Dylan Lauzon, risk director here at the Port of Portland, and I'll be walking you through the fiscal year 2022 risk management plan. Steve, if we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So today's agenda, I'll quickly give you a recap of Commission Policy 6.1.1. I'll take you through an overview of our risk management team as it is today. We'll talk just briefly about the Port's risk landscape and some of the risks that we've identified for further evaluation. I'll walk you through a few slides that will take you through our insurance program overview. We'll talk about planned initiatives and programs before finalizing with the request for approval of the risk management plan today. So if we can move to the first slide, please, Steve. Thank you. As Antoinette had just mentioned, Commission Policy 6.1.1 delegates contracting authority from the Commission to the Executive Director. And specifically, it states that the Executive Director may contract for insurance when consistent with a Commission-approved risk management plan for the Port. Again, a catalyst for coming today. I'm newer to this role as well as our CFO, Antoinette, so I thought it would be a great time for us to review the plan with you today and then get approval to adopt the plan as we see fit. So moving to the next slide, please. Great, so our risk management team overview. I'll start here with a statement of our mission. So here in the risk management department, our mission is to create and protect value by employing a consistent framework and process to identify, assess, manage, monitor, and provide insights into the opportunities and threats impacting the Port's strategic and operational objectives. Our current roles, of course, I'm here leading this group as the risk director. We have Dan Reed, who's been with the organization for about six plus years, who's involved in our claims program management as well. We've got Jimmy Porter, our senior risk and insurance analyst. We're lucky this year to have a risk management intern. Her name is Katie Williams. She's a student at Portland State University. We are currently in the process of recruiting for our vacant enterprise risk management analyst, and we do have another vacancy for our sort of entry-level risk analyst position that we're looking to fill later in the fiscal year. The primary, what I'll call day-to-day responsibilities for our group, insurance administration, claims management and recovery. We also perform contract review and consulting for the various business units. We do transactional risk evaluations, and then throughout our day, we do risk identification and assessment, and then we take on special projects as we see risks and need to develop further risk management mitigations. Next slide, please. Great. So did want to share with you some of my initial thoughts around our risk landscape and some of the risks that we've identified for further evaluation. But I do want to say up front, the port faces an ever-increasing and evolving number of strategic, financial, operational, hazard, and compliance risks. Again, constantly evolving, changing. And so I think it's important when we talk about risk management that we let you know that it's really an iterative process. And we'll continue to look at these risks over time to see how things have changed and determine what actions we need to take. So in my initial discussions with senior leadership, our executive team, a few of you commissioners, as well as my own analysis, I've come up with sort of a list that I'd like to begin with in terms of evaluating for further evaluation. I would describe each of these risks as having a high inherent risk value, meaning that if we did nothing at all, these are the significant risks that our company faces. And so really my evaluation next steps would be to analyze these risks, looking at how likely they are to occur, what the impacts from both an operational, financial, and reputational standpoint might be for our organization. Understanding today, sorry, the lights just went out in my office I'm in here, but hope that doesn't create a problem for you all. Understanding what we're doing about those risks today, and then ultimately evaluating whether or not we think what we're doing today is enough, or if we need to take further action to mitigate these risks. So those risks that sort of have bubbled up through my conversations begin with, again, a protracted COVID-19 recovery. So what does it look like for the organization if this COVID recovery is a little bit more protracted than what we sort of have forecasted or expected? What types of actions are we taking today? How can we better position ourselves to lessen the impacts if that were to occur? Natural and man-made disasters, as you know, we are exposed to earthquakes, floods, fires, and other natural hazards, as well as man-made disasters. So again, evaluating what programs we have in place today, should we be doing more, and then creating work plans to further develop and mitigate against those risks. Cyber breach and ransomware attacks, I think we're seeing an increase in frequency, both in government agencies, really across the board in all agencies, but certainly government agencies have seen an increase in frequency recently. So again, we would just like to take a look at what are we doing today, should we be doing more, and how would we implement those changes. Of course, we want to keep our eye on potential environmental liabilities and remediation. T-Core construction project risks is another one that has sort of bubbled up. Of course, we'll be thinking about safety as it relates to the construction, but also looking at whether or not the construction is on time, on budget, on scope. So what are we doing about that today to manage those risks related to the construction project? What else can we do? We talked a lot, great presentation just a few moments ago from our diversity, equity, and inclusion group. But we want to look at shared prosperity and the strategic execution of that goal. I think there are some potential threats as it relates to this risk. We committed, this is a bold commitment that we've made as an organization to make sure that we are ensuring that the benefits of our actions are going to our community broadly and not just to a narrow group of status quo. And so as we make that a commitment to our community, what does that mean for us if we're not able to achieve those objectives, both from a financial perspective, an operational perspective, and trust within our community, our reputation? So we'll take a look at what we're doing today to ensure that we successfully execute that plan. Next, public safety and security. I think this has been on everybody's watch list for a long time now, but having been newer to the role, it's certainly something I'd like to dig into and evaluate a bit further. I think an emerging risk, something that maybe wasn't on my list, I'll say 6 months ago or 9 months ago, employee attraction and retention. I think across the board, we're seeing that the labor market looks a little bit different than years past. And so trying to understand both from an attraction and retention standpoint, what are we doing today? What further actions can we take? What are the potential impacts if we don't take further action? And then again, another emerging risk that's sort of on our mind that I think we're taking steps to do to address today, but again, want to do a deeper dive is really around climate change and how will that impact our operations and potential hazards, getting back to that natural and man-made disasters risk. I want to pause here just for a moment in case there's any questions on this landscape or slide. Great, hearing none, then I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide, please, Steve. Excellent. So what you're looking at here is a graph of our total cost of risk, going backwards to fiscal year 17, as well as a projection for our fiscal year 22 results. We've broken this slide out or the total cost of risk into a couple different groups. And I'll just talk briefly around some of the volatility that you see here and provide you a little bit of background on why these numbers have changed over that time. So if you look at that first group of numbers there on the top, the total retained property and liability losses, there is quite a bit of volatility from year to year. What I'll say there is that's expected, right? So these are flood damage, injuries, any sort of incidents or claims that we get throughout a year. These are expected to sort of be volatile. One year we'll have great experience, and then unfortunately we may have 2 or 3 large incidents that were sort of unexpected. So the volatility you see in those numbers is sort of expected. Of course, we always want to be like we were in fiscal year 18 with a very low retained number, but unfortunately that doesn't always work out. The next line there, workers' compensation program costs. Again, a little bit of volatility there because it is hinged on our actual losses as well as some of our insurance market rates, as well as the bond assessments. You can look at fiscal year 17, that's the highest number here. That difference or the delta there between some of that and the sort of average over those 5 years really is related to 2 specific claims in our marine and navigation department. I did investigate those losses in the past and have determined that we have taken action to change some of the ways that we were working out there to be safer. So we don't expect those losses to be repeated in future years. I do have a little bit higher number there for our projected fiscal year 22. Part of that is related to the insurance workers' comp costs, but some of that has to do with the loss and using sort of 5-year averages. We do hope to come down a number less than that, but I did want to be a bit more conservative in my projection. Property and liability insurance premiums, I'll skip that for just a moment. I do have a whole slide dedicated to the breakout of those, so we'll skip that there for a moment. You can see then the next grouping is really around our Osip costs. Again, this is our owner-controlled insurance program directly related to the construction at T-Core. So you can see a large number there in fiscal year 2019. That was the inception of the insurance program, the owner-controlled insurance program. So there were some upfront insurance costs. And then from fiscal year 20 through 22, primarily what we're paying there is related to the workers' comp insurance. We get billed on a monthly basis based on the actual labor hours involved in the construction, as well as some of the loss. And so you can see there, fiscal year 22, it's showing about $854,000. That would be both for insurance and predicted losses. What I do have to say about that number, that estimate of losses is based on our original estimate using a sort of industrial trend for losses in construction projects. Based on our first couple of years of history, and I know I did come to the commission a few months back to talk about the OSIP program in general, we have to compliment our safety team and our contractors out there. We've had tremendous experience when it comes to losses. They've done a great job of limiting those losses. So I do expect that number to be much more in line with what you see as our actuals in fiscal year 2021. But I did not want to change that estimate since it was based on sort of industry standards. And then finally, the risk management expense, you do see some volatility there between fiscal year 17 and 18. The primary driver in the reduction is that we made a decision as an organization to split the safety team out of the risk management group. So originally our safety department did report through the director of risk management. When we stripped those salaries out, or stripped that group out, the overall expenses for the risk management group did decrease. I think the purpose behind splitting that group out was really just to provide a little bit more visibility into our safety program. We did hire a director to oversee that group, and really just to show that, as a value to the organization, this is important. So it does get a little bit more visibility there. Any questions here on the total cost of risk? I think to Antoinette's earlier comment during the introduction, we would like to come back in front of you next year to provide you an update, as well as a forecast, a more forward-looking forecast, potentially a 3 to 5 year forecast. Great. Not seeing any questions. We'll go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. Excellent. So this is an overview of our insurance program structure. I know looking at this, it's quite a bit, so I will not spend too much time on this and allow you all to sort of look at it at your own leisure. I think there's a couple key takeaways here. First, you can see that we have a broad range of coverage. Some of the major policies within this structure are really around our property coverage. So you can see we have about $1 billion in limits for our property. We carry both aviation and marine liability insurance. There is the public officials liability, protecting our executives as well as you, the commission, as well as some cyber coverage as well. I do think in looking at this chart, there might be some opportunities for us to optimize our program by evaluating and reviewing our limits, as well as some of our deductibles and self-insurance. So as I work through that evaluation, when we come forward next year, I may have some recommendations on how we may want to adjust those to optimize our risk retention and risk financing strategies. Great, moving on. And you'll see here is, as I complete the insurance program overview, our premium trends over the past 5 years, as well as our forecast. Excluding those Osip costs, which kind of take this graph sort of out of whack there is a clear trend for any of you that are involved in insurance or do that in your other activities. It's been a very challenging market over the past 5 years. You can see that our numbers have continually trended up. There's really two factors behind driving those increasing costs. The first factor, of course, is the market rate. Insurance companies are sort of tightening their belts a little bit. There have been large losses, catastrophic losses in the property market, as well as some aviation and marine losses across the globe. And it's really the market that absorbs those and then shares the costs with everyone. And so it's not really specific to us and our exposure. It's more of a market factor. And then the second driver of the cost is our, what I'll call exposure, meaning that we get priced based on employments, our salaries, and other exposures that inflate over time. If you think about our property policy in particular, it's based on our building values. And so there's inflation in how much it would cost to replace a particular building over time, as well as all of the new additions to our properties based on the new construction. So as Concourse B comes online, we had Concourse E added into values. We've got the RCC and the QTA just a couple of years ago. As we add these new buildings and exposures, it does increase our rate overall, but certainly we see it. I am still hoping to manage that 6.13 for fiscal year 22. I am hopeful that we can come down a bit lower, but that's our conservative estimate based on what we're seeing in the market today. Any question on the premium trends before I move on? Okay, great. Then we'll go ahead and move to the next slide, please, Steve. So planned initiatives and programs. Again, one of the things that I'm looking to do is to fill out my team, certainly build out the institutional knowledge. There has been a bit of turnover here recently in the risk management group, and so one of my goals is really just to continue to build that institutional knowledge and really get a better understanding of our organization as a whole, as well as our risk tolerances and appetite for risk. And as we do that, I think we can make some really good decisions and help to optimize. We're also looking to develop and implement our enterprise risk management program. I think as a starting point, we'll begin that program evaluating those risks that I identified a bit earlier, as well as surveying to see whether or not there are other significant risks that we should be bringing under that umbrella to do that deep dive and evaluation. We're also looking to refresh the port's business continuity plan. We had a great presentation from our DE&I group. And so within risk management, we're looking at ways that we can contribute to the port's shared prosperity goals. And I did hear we talked about some of the changes we're doing in contracting. I think risk management has a role to play in that by identifying and removing any insurance barriers for small and disadvantaged businesses interested in working with the port. So we do have sort of specific requirements or typical requirements in our contracts. And so one of the things that I'm doing right now is really just looking at those requirements and trying to determine whether or not those are a barrier or an obstacle, and then providing our small businesses with other, I guess, education or opportunities to work with us without those being a barrier, while still maintaining protections for the port. We will be auditing, evaluating, and hopefully improving our certificate of insurance tracking process. This initiative is in process already. We have conducted an initial audit. I think we have some recommendations, and we're beginning to take action on those recommendations. We'll be establishing the driver's license monitoring program. So thinking about some of the specific risks just around driver safety. And then I'm partnering with the safety group, or my team is partnering with the safety group to update our driver safety program. So not only will we be monitoring our drivers' histories, but also providing them with some resources to ensure that we're keeping our drivers safe on the road, as well as international travel safety. We're hoping to get to the end of the COVID period, or at least start to turn the corner on that. That means that some of the travel that we do internally that's been on hold may begin to increase as we look to do our business development. So how are we protecting our employees when they try to travel internationally? And can we provide them the resources and update our policies and procedures? So those are the things, some of the things that I'm looking at here in the very near term to implement to further mitigate our risks and ultimately optimize what we're doing here from a risk management perspective. Any questions on this slide or what we've got in mind here in fiscal year 22? Okay, great. Hearing none. Steve, can we then go to the next slide? And so this, we'd like to request for approval of the risk management plan. The risk director, me specifically, requests that you approve under the executive director's recommendation to adopt and approve the risk management plan in accordance with Commission Policy 6.1.1.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Clearly a sophisticated program for a very involved business that has lots of different branches to it and probably takes different thinking than just running an airport by itself or running marine terminals by themselves. So appreciate the work that has gone into thinking and rethinking the program, as well as where we might end up being able to save some money in the future and tracking risks as the world continues to change around us. So I will ask for a motion and a second for approval of the executive director's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Okay, Pam, would you lead us through the vote, please?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Of course.
Thank
Call
you.
on Dan Pippinger for our final agenda item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thanks for hanging in there for this last item. This is a request for an approval to award 2 contracts to Relay Resources, which is an Oregon Ford provider, which we'll talk about in the presentation. And the purpose is to provide janitorial and pest control services and supplies at PDX and related port facilities, including the headquarters building and the new rental car center for fiscal year 22. Randy Thompson, our senior contract manager, is here to present the recommendation to award the contracts. Randy, it's all yours.
Good morning, and thanks for having me today. So next slide, please. So I'll get right into it today. So as you may be aware, there is a statute in the state of Oregon for public agencies to procure certain types of work and services from qualified nonprofit organizations. We typically use Relay Resources, formerly known as PHC or Portland Habilitation something. It's actually before my time, but Relay has been a good partner to us since 1996. And they do provide our janitorial and pest control here at PDX and our surrounding buildings. Those contracts, as they're renewed throughout the course of the year, are submitted to the Oregon Department of Administrative Service, otherwise known as DAS, and they go over all of our pricing and make sure that it's sufficient, that it's fair for both sides, and that the terms and everything are going to be able to be met. The good news about this program is that it does provide for meaningful opportunities for folks that are differently abled, and we're proud to support that effort and work with Relay for so long to provide meaningful work to Oregonians and folks from the areas where we live. One of our major contracts that provides service at PDX and the surrounding buildings that support PDX has come to its end of its useful life. It can no longer be extended. And additionally, we've had some personnel changes that support some of the other services at our HQ building and our concession partners, as well as our rent-a-car center, as has been mentioned before, which has recently come online. So with that in mind, if you go to the next slide, please. So the scope of work is exactly what you would imagine under janitorial, everything from the roof all the way down to the floor and then some in the basement. So these 2 contracts that we're talking about do provide the service for PDX and the outlying buildings, the port headquarters and the new rent-a-car center. And on top of the rent-a-car center, our port and TSA facilities on the upper 3 or 4 floors that exist on the building. These contracts that we're hoping that you will award are staffed primarily with SEIU employees that fill full and part-time roles, and we're proud to partner with them. You know, it's interesting that as I saw the Travel and Leisure announcement today about the 8th year, that each year that we've been awarded the top spot, folks speak to the cleanliness of the facility. And that is in large part, if not almost solely, a result of our partnership with Relay Resources. So that's not to say that we don't have instances where we need to make sure that service is where it needs to be, but they've been very responsive and we're very happy with their work and the partnership. Next slide, please. So the compensation that the first year, which would be for the 9-month period beginning, this for quarters two through 4 for fiscal 22. So from the beginning of October through the end of June is just south of $8,500,000. For the 2 new buildings that, for the 2 contracts that include the new building, the RCC, as well as HQ, just over $758,000. Once this 9-month period ends, both of these contracts will have 1-year option years that we can exercise, And typically in the past, there had been a $500,000 cap year over year for expenses before we would renew. We would require a trip to the commission to extend in those years where we did exceed. We're finding, though, that based on the size of the primary contract that I manage, the one that supports PDX and the terminal, are getting to the point where they're so large, a wage increase as a result of SEIU bargaining or anything that comes forth from the Port's Wage Initiative for certain service contract providers. Those in conjunction with some minor changes to expenditures associated with consumable supplies or additional portions of the building going on and offline have resulted in that 500,000 being exceeded more regularly, we project in the future. A perfect example of that is pre-COVID, our consumable supply budget for PDX was $750,000. That's down to $450,000 for fiscal 22 is what we're budgeting. But as folks return in droves back to PDX, we need to make sure that we have the ability to extend that contract without coming before you unless anything significant in size or activity brings us back before you again. So with that, next slide, please. We'd like your approval to proceed with awarding of 2 new contracts to Relay Resources for janitorial and pest control beginning in fiscal 22 for the Port of Portland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Commissioner Nemi.
Just a comment. So really appreciate your comments and recognition of the janitorial staff that does do just an incredible job of taking care of the asset of the airport. And I think for those of us who travel a lot, you notice a marked difference between how clean PDX is compared to other ports. So I'm excited. I'll be voting to support this contract and also see this as a responsible contractor that not only provides good wages, but also a suite of benefits that make a big difference for this workforce. So appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Nemi. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion and second to approve the Executive Director's recommendation.
I so move.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, Pam, would you lead us through the vote, please?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Commissioners. The meeting is adjourned. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you then. Thank you.